Last month marked the end of Title 42, a pandemic-era public health measure that restricted the right to seek asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border. What many pundits expected to see happen was not what really did happen. To get some clarity on this, I interviewed Santa Cruz County Supervisor Bruce Bracker. He's a politician and businessman and a straight shooter on border issues. I started by asking what politicians get wrong when they talk about the border region.
It's not just politicians. I think that a lot of people don't understand how big the numbers are of economy on the U.S.-Mexican border. In fact, if you combine, there was a statistic that said if you combine, the economies of what's happening in both U.S. and Mexico, it's the 7th largest economy in the world.
So what is it that you think politicians should be focusing on rather than what we sort of see, which is just focusing on immigration?
Well, I mean, focusing on immigration is not a bad thing, but we need to work on immigration. I mean, we need immigration that works for our country.
Why do you think politicians can't come together to figure out a way to, through law and order, allow workers to come across, work, and then go home when they're not working?
Well, I'm a cynic. When it comes, my answer is very cynical. I think that both leaders in both parties, it's an election item for them that if they can rile up their base using immigration, they are assured re-election. But I think that they're looking at it incorrectly, because if we go and solve this problem, our economy will take off like never before. We need workers in this country. We need workers that'll do jobs that, quite frankly, Americans won't do. I mean, there are ranchers that need 1 or 2 cattle hands. There are dairies that need people that'll handle cattle. There are farms across the country, whether they're growing crops that are coming out of the ground or crops that are coming out of trees, that are desperate for people to come and pick. And these are, those are just some of that's the agricultural component of it. Let's look at the house building component of it. All sectors of building a house, we need people to come in here and do that work.
You think that what's happening in Congress might be a little different if those lawmakers were forced to listen to county supervisors from border counties?
I don't think you get to force anybody to listen, but it would sure be an interesting exercise to have that done and to hear what, have all the county supervisors sit down either through a question and answer or through just a 3-paragraph or 4-paragraph statement that says what is their definition of comprehensive immigration reform from our perspective on the border. Because what we've seen with the transportation of migrants to other states and to other cities is all of a sudden they're dealing with what we've been dealing with, and not just for the last 3 years. This is cyclical. I mean, this happens every 2 to 3 years that we get another wave and then we get another wave. It doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter who's in Congress. This wave comes cyclically.
You talk about commerce on the border, and a key to commerce is being able to get commercial vehicles and tourist vehicles through the ports of entry. But we also have a problem with fentanyl being smuggled across the border, generally through these vehicles. Is it possible to get the trucks and the cars through the border and still put a decent effort at trying to weed out the smugglers? And if it's possible, are we seeing that now?
We're absolutely seeing that. So in Nogales, the greater Nogales, Santa Cruz County Port Authority, and there's a port authority in Douglas and in Yuma County. We've been advocating for technology and for agents for many, many years. And so right now, U.S. Customs is basically scanning every truck that comes into the United States.
3 weeks ago or so, Title 42 ended. And there were a lot of predictions on what was going to happen on the border. And a lot of those predictions went something like this. We are going to see a wave of illegal migration unlike we've seen before. That didn't happen. What did the forecasters get wrong about the end of Title 42?
Well, that didn't happen in the state of Arizona. I can't speak for what's happening in Texas. I know there have been a lot more people. It's a lot easier to get to Texas and the Texas borders. from points down south. And it happened a little bit on the U.S. Mexican border in Arizona, but not to the degree of what people thought. And quite honestly, right now, people are patiently waiting their turn to get into a port of entry and see a customs officer and go through the process for their asylum request. And we hope that people stay patient, because that's what we really need. We need this to be an orderly process.
Bruce Bracker, County Supervisor from Santa Cruz County, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.